The LG G4 is currently the newest member on the Android flagship block, and with it come plenty of smartphone firsts, mainly in the camera area, like a unique color spectrum sensor and a tri-axis optical image stabilization. Now the internals are not the only thing lifted out of the ordinary, though, as the LG G4 also offers variants with unorthodox stitched leather backs. HTC's finest for the season, the M9, makes for a logical comparison with its all-metal unibody design and updated internals. Hey guys, John V from PhoneArena here, and you're watching our video comparison between the LG G4 and the HTC One M9. Premium versus flexible design is your choice of a more compact M9 with a metal body, or the G4 with a swappable battery pack. LG is the only major flagship maker this season that offers a removable back cover, replaceable battery, and expandable storage at the same time. Now this combo allows for the ultimate flexibility when you want to change the look of the phone with an optional leather rear cover. Granted, the compromise is that it's not quite as exquisitely stylish as the aluminum casing of the One M9, but to each their own. Needless to say, the LG G4 is harder to hold and operate with one hand due to the considerably larger screen size. The One M9 is taller than average for its screen size, but it's decently narrow, so holding it in your palm and operating the display interface with your thumb only is pretty easy. Another obvious difference between the M9 and the G4 are their displays. Now the M9 features a 5-inch Super LCD 3 display with a resolution of 1080p, while the G4 comes out swinging with a larger 5.5-inch IPS LCD panel with a resolution of Quad HD. Despite the G4's higher pixel density of 538 pixels per inch against the 441 pixels per inch tally of the M9, and both screens deliver sharp imagery with no noticeable icon or text jagginess, even at closer examination. LG might tout the quantum display technology used for the G4 screen, but when it comes down to color quality and in presentation, both the M9 and G4 deliver cold colors, above the 8000 Kelvin mark to be exact. The HTC One M9 has a tad brighter display, which can be expected considering that the backlighting in the G4 has to seep through much more pixels. Since both screens exhibit cold, somewhat inaccurate color presentations, the only tangible advantage of the G4 screen over the M9 is its larger size. Both handsets offer their own take on the default Android 5.1 Lollipop interface. The new LG UX 4.0 interface of the G4 follows in the flat, colorful, and minimalistic manner that was introduced with the G3. Functionally, it bears many of the same core features of LG's experience, such as knock on to turn on the screen on and off by performing a double tap. You also have the Q-Slide apps that get placed over whatever we're doing. And finally, you have also dual window for that true multitasking with apps running side by side to one another. As for the M9, it uses its latest Sense 7 user interface and remains one of the fastest Android skins out there with zippy to-the-point animations. They have HTC's improved blink feed service, and you also have a few more HTC touches. Now, the biggest innovation in Sense 7, however, is the plenty of customization options built in with themes. So it's an easy way to change the appearance of Android, but it's just a lot more customizable than what we're given with the G4's themes experience. All told, the flat and square LG UX 4.0 experience is no match for the sleek Sense 7 in terms of the visual flair, but when it comes to functionality, LG definitely has the upper hand. LG went with the 64-bit hexa-core 1.8 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon 808 chip to power its latest flagship in the G4. Now this particular setup breaks down to 4 ARM Cortex-A53 and 2 ARM Cortex-A57 cores that are complemented by 3 GB of RAM and the Adreno 418 GPU. The HTC One M9, on the other hand, was one of the first devices around with the latest Snapdragon 810 chip coupled with 3 GB of RAM. Now, given the potential overheat and the subsequent throttling that comes with the Snapdragon 810, LG might have been wise to go with the 808. Still, looking at the benchmarks, it's easy to notice that the M9 is above and beyond when it comes to the graphics processing test, making it a better choice for gaming. Overall, HTC's conservative choice of screen resolution and the powerful GPU allows the phone to run the latest games at high frame rates with ease. The LG G4 comes with a 16 megapixel sensor and a very wide f1.8 aperture lens, while HTC opted for a 20 megapixel sensor with a more orthodox f2.2 aperture lens. Don't let the simple resolution count fool you though, since LG introduces a bunch of smartphone firsts in the G4, such as a tri-axis optical stabilization and a color spectrum analyzer, further complementing the laser autofocus technology that made a cameo in the G3 last year. LG's camera app has acquired a bunch of new settings and features to expand its capabilities, including the ability to shoot in RAW format and a new manual mode. Now this move obviously targets enthusiasts who want a high degree of control, dishing up options to adjust white balance, focus, exposure compensation, ISO, and shutter speed. The interface of the M9, on the other hand, has not changed much from the original M8, and that's a good thing as you can get very quick snapping and access to some manual controls, in addition to the usual bells and whistles. When it comes to image quality, the G4 surpasses the M9 in color presentation, as HTC's phone often gets thrown off towards the colder side of the spectrum, while G4's colors stay truer to the original. The wider aperture and the optical image stabilization technology that LG uses gets a good run, as its shots are much better exposed when there's plenty of light around, not to mention indoor or night pictures, where the difference between the M9 and G4 becomes drastically in favor of the LG handset. The 20 megapixel camera of the M9 captures good details outdoors, but the pictures come out a tad soft, while the G4 manages to deliver sharper imagery. In terms of video, both do 4K video at 30 frames per second, as well as 1080p at 60 frames per second, but the M9 video has slower autofocusing and a weird jumpy effect, plus the lack of stabilization shows when you start panning around. The G4 exposes the footage better, with rapid adjustments when needed, good levels of detail, natural colors, and steadier capture. HTC, however, delivers better stereo audio recording, while the one from the G4 sounds a bit thin. The music player in the G4 doesn't really see any notable changes, so despite its rich functionality, it's still blander looking than the slick and polished music app in Sense 7. Moreover, in terms of playback, it's the M9 that truly shines with its boom sound dual front-firing speakers. Technically, the amplified speakers are a bit quieter at 72.8 decibels, but you get the same rich sound with depth thanks to lower tones that is practically missing on the single speaker of the G4, which is very strong at 79 decibels. The Dolby Audio Surround mode of the M9 adds more spatial volume to the sound, so watching YouTube videos on the phone, for example, is a rather pleasing experience. Now, the 5.5-inch Quad HD display of the G4 is a visual feast to the eyes, but its true potency is experienced while watching videos on it. Obviously, the display comes to life thanks to the brilliant colors and smooth operation of the handset, something that's accentuated with the addition of a multitasking element where a video can be layered on top of everything else in the interface. Both handsets play most major video formats that you load on them, and even 1080p resolutions are not an issue. Call quality with the G4 for the most part is unchanged from what we experienced last year with the G3. In the greater scheme of things, it gets the job done. However, there's a slight hit of distortion to voices through the earpiece that make them sound a little bit artificial. The HTC One M9 is loud and clear when it comes to calls, so there are no issues with hearing your contacts through the earpiece, and voices on the other end of the line also sound clear. Although LG increased the dimensions of the G4 over its predecessor, there's no change to the battery capacity whatsoever, so it's packing along the same 3000 mAh battery under the hood. It's good to carry us through a solid one day of normal usage, but putting it through our battery benchmark test, it achieves a mark of 6 hours and 6 minutes, which is a smidgen behind the M9's tally of 6 hours and 25 minutes. The LG G4 and HTC One M9 turned out to be two very similar flagships in an evolutionary way, as both don't offer the earth-shaking upgrade from the predecessors that Samsung did with the S6. LG, however, throws in more unique bells and whistles for the G4 to be an inherently worthier upgrade, while HTC kept novelties to a minimum, addressing chiefly the rear camera resolution with a 20 megapixel snapper. With the price equality and the obvious screen size and design differences, it'll be just a matter of personal preference whether you pick the more compact, more premium looking M9 or the G4 with a larger Quad HD screen and removable battery. If you're a music aficionado, we'd recommend you go with the M9, while the G4 is the phone for shutterbugs and media buffs, with its superb picture and video taking and playback capabilities.